Ashford Hollow hadn't really changed. Not in the ways that mattered. The air still reeked of clipped roses and arrogance. 8 years gone, and yet the cobblestones leading to the country club still felt like they recognized the weight of my old footsteps. Maybe that's why I didn't pause when I stepped out of the black car and adjusted my cufflinks like I belonged. I knew damn well my name wasn't on the guest list. I figured that out the second I opened the email I was never supposed to see. But I wasn't here for politeness. This wasn't about goodbyes or healing old wounds. No, this was about proving something they needed to remember I still existed. Actually, no. More than that. I'd evolved. Inside, the chandeliers spilled golden light like they wept wealth, every flicker a reminder of old money and older grudges. The kind that acts like men like me were never part of the picture. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I walked in like I owned the damn floor. The music pulsed, soft and smug. Laughter floated like perfume. Champagne hissed into glasses so thin they probably cost more than my first used car. My shoes clicked across marble floors that screamed exclusivity. And I didn't even blink. In fact, I smiled. The moment felt ripped from a movie. And like every good film, there's that single breath silent, electric, right before the room shifts. That breath ended when Vivian Whitmore's voice, sharp as frostbite, cut straight through the chatter. She stood stiff as ever, her spine pulled taut, and her eyes locked onto me like a hawk spotting prey. The entire corner around her froze. Champagne flutes stopped midair. And then she said it like a gunshot. "Why is this failure here?" She didn't even try to whisper. Didn't wrap it in that soft, polished cruelty this crowd was so known for. No, she said it loud. Clear. Proud. Harsh. Predictable. She looked just the same, tight shoulders, a string of pearls choking her neck like a leash she'd chosen to wear. I didn't even twitch. Then there she was, Sienna. My ex-wife stood near the marble bar, laughing with a pack of women who smelled like power and walked like verdicts. She turned slowly, elegant as always, and looked through me like I was a fingerprint on her wine glass. "You're not on the guest list," she said, voice smooth as silk and just as cutting. Sienna Whitmore. Once the woman who called me her world. Now just another stranger in sequins. Her dress shimmered like it had something to prove. I remembered when I used to unzip those dresses, back when her laugh was real and her eyes still reached for me in the dark. "Yeah?" She looked at me like I was a blemish on her perfect night. That should have been my cue to leave. They expected me to back down. To slip away. To vanish like the disappointment they believed I'd become. But I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't plead for space or respect. I smiled. Slow. Sharp. The kind of smile that shows up right before everything falls apart. "That's the thing about ghosts," I said, my voice low and steady, just loud enough to ripple across the nearby tables. "We don't leave until the house stops being haunted." And I watched the words sink in. Vivian's throat visibly tightened. Sienna didn't blink, but her fingers twitched against her glass. The whispers started, lips hidden behind polished nails. The music kept going, but the room felt different, tilted, like everything had shifted just slightly toward the storm. I didn't stay long. I didn't have to. I strolled through that ballroom like I was walking through the ruins of a life I once built with bloody hands. Every inch of it the same. Ornate. Hollow. Paintings of dead donors. Velvet curtains. Gilded shame. But this time, I wasn't here asking for a second chance. I was here to remind them I never disappeared. As I reached the door, I heard it, someone muttering, "Was that Miles? Miles Bennett?" The name still sounded foreign when someone else said it. I'd kept it. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted it stamped across every deal I made, every headline with my name attached. Let them choke on it. Outside, the air bit sharp. The valet blinked at me, clearly not connecting the man in the tailored suit with the name he just heard. "Car for Miles Bennett," I said calmly. As he rushed off, I let myself glance back at the club once. Not with longing, but with clarity. I'd come back. And this time I didn't come empty-handed. Because in towns like Ashford Hollow, they rewrite history. Clean it up with cash. Polish the past with polite smiles and forgotten truths. But I remember everything. I wasn't always on the outside looking in. I was once at the center of it all, Sienna's world, her husband, her equal. I held her hand the day her first boutique opened. Stayed up balancing her accounts when her dream was barely breathing. And now? I was about to make damn sure they never forgot me again. I first sketched the storefront for her dream on the back of a greasy diner napkin. A place we couldn't really afford, but it didn't matter. I poured everything I had into building Sienna's fashion fantasy into something the Bennetts could finally flaunt. But deep down, I was never truly one of them. At first, they treated me like some fascinating artifact. The architect from East Sideridge. Rough around the edges, refreshingly modest, brilliant in a tragic sort of way. A conversation piece for the galas, perfect when diversity was fashionable. I still remember Harrison Bennett leaning over to a friend once and saying I was Sienna's little project with just enough promise. That should have been my warning sign. Instead, I swallowed every backhanded compliment and told myself love could bridge the gap. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Things didn't fall apart overnight. It started with the small cuts. Vivian publicly correcting my grammar in front of major donors. Sienna letting out a full-on laugh when I mispronounced the name of some French designer whose clothes I paid for. Her dad suggesting more than once that I cancel some of my own meetings so I could focus on being more present for Sienna. Then came the dinner. One of those polished Bennett family affairs. White linens, tall glasses that caught the candlelight, conversations that could slice through skin. Sienna wore this deep red dress, the kind that clung to her like it had been made for worship. I remember watching her laugh at something her cousin said. She looked at me briefly and I thought maybe we were still okay. But somewhere between dessert and digestives, I saw Vivian lean toward Harrison, whisper something behind her wine glass. He gave a single nod. No expression. Just agreement. Everyone kept talking, clinking glasses, playing their part. Meanwhile, I had no clue I was eating my last meal as Sienna's husband. That night, I came home full but uneasy. My chest felt tight. Off. The porch light wasn't on. The front door wouldn't open. I figured wrong key? Maybe the lock jammed? I tried again. Then again. Still nothing. I knocked. Nothing. Circled around to the backyard, our little escape with wine and laughter under fairy lights, and there they were. 2 suitcases. Mine. Sitting on the bench like they were waiting for me to take the hint. Then my phone buzzed. It was Sienna. No warm words. No emotion. Just 4 cold ones, you'll land on your feet. I stared at the screen like it might explain itself. My heart thundered in my chest. I called her. Straight to voicemail. No answer. A few minutes later, Harrison rolled up in his black Jaguar. He stepped out, no tie, just that smug, effortless authority he wore like a second skin. This is for the best, he said, calm as a doctor delivering bad news. You'll thank us later. And then he drove off. That was it. No argument. No screaming match. Just a quiet decision made over scotch and superiority. I remember sitting there, beside my luggage, under that flickering porch light, our porch. The silence around me felt deafening. I kept staring at that door, wondering how love could vanish so completely without a sound. But they didn't just end a relationship. They erased me. Weeks later, I noticed I was gone from Sienna's boutique website. My bio? Scrubbed. My sketches? Replaced. Even the photos of me at the store's opening gone, like I'd never stood there with a ribbon in one hand and her waist in the other. People we used to laugh with stopped replying to my texts. Calls went unanswered. Invitations dried up like spilled wine on a silk dress. That first night, I slept in my car. Told myself it was temporary. Just a rough patch. By the 3rd night, the lie started to feel hollow. I crashed on Malcolm's couch, a friend who didn't vanish when everyone else did. I owe that man more than words can say. Back then, I wandered the streets with nothing but my sketch pad and this dull ache in my chest. I remember walking past a new store downtown, one of my old designs. Sienna's name lit up above the entrance, glowing like a neon crown. I saw someone take a selfie outside. That night, I read an article calling her a visionary, a style icon. They praised the originality, the elegance. But it was my design, my blueprint, my damn hands. To the world, though, it was all hers. And the worst part? Wasn't the couch, or the gnawing hunger, or the humiliating silence. It was the fact that no one, not a single person, checked to see if I was okay. Not Sienna. Not her family. Not even the ones who raised glasses at our wedding and clapped a little too loud. They didn't just leave me, they rewrote the ending. Made it look like I'd walked out. Like I wasn't strong enough to keep up. But deep down, I knew the truth. They were terrified of what I'd become without them. And that's exactly what I planned to show them. Rock bottom wasn't some metaphor for me, it had an address. A cramped studio apartment above a bakery that smelled like old yeast and burnt dreams. The pipes screamed when the heat kicked in. The window overlooked an alley filled with more trash than people. The place rattled like it resented being alive. But it was mine. That little studio apartment might have been run down, but it gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, security. A lock I could turn at night. A roof where I didn't have to brace for headlights pulling up or boots stomping toward my door to throw me out. I took whatever work came my way. Most days I was freelancing, drafting floor plans for folks who couldn't afford fancy firms, contractors who didn't care about titles, just whether you delivered on time, kitchen remodels, basement redos, backyard patios for families who thought a pergola could transport them to Tuscany. On weekends, I hauled designer furniture into houses I could never dream of owning. My back paid the price, but my rent got covered. And through it all, I never put the pencil down. That sketchbook? It was my anchor. While the world forgot I existed, it listened without judgment. I filled it with everything I had, dreams of cities that pulsed with life, neighborhoods that felt alive, commercial spaces that didn't just exist but breathed. Even when I was dead broke and dead tired, I kept creating. That's when I met Malcolm Reyes. He wasn't a man who wore his success on his sleeve. No fancy watch, no sharp cufflinks, just a weathered look that said he'd seen his share of setbacks and still showed up. We crossed paths at a community design expo. I'd tacked up a few renderings on a pathetic corkboard in a dim corner, next to a sad pile of free pens. Honestly, I didn't expect anyone to look twice. But Malcolm did. He stood there for 5 full minutes, staring at one design in particular. A mixed-use complex I'd imagined sprouting from the ground like it belonged to the earth itself. "You drew this?" he asked, eyes locked on the lines. I nodded, not sure whether to feel proud or embarrassed. "I run a small development firm," he said. "Nothing flashy, but I could use someone who sees like this." That's how the door cracked open. The first gig was small floor plans for a low-income housing project in Westlake. I knocked it out in 2 days and hit send. I figured that was it. But then another project landed in my inbox. Then another. Soon, I wasn't just sketching behind the scenes, I was offering ideas, leading meetings, walking construction sites. Malcolm and I spent nights in his garage-turned office, sipping burnt coffee and scribbling out new visions for broken blocks. One evening, 6 months in, he looked up from a blueprint and said, "It's time people knew what we're building." That's when Reyes and Bennett Urban Concepts was born. Started small, modest office, tight budget, but we worked smart, took the jobs big firms wouldn't touch. We turned flood zones into livable housing. We breathed life into forgotten strip malls, converting them into community centers with heartbeat and purpose. The money didn't scream, but the results did. By year 3, our name was on contracts all over the state. By year 5, we were going toe-to-toe with old guard firms. By year 7, national design journals were praising us for our integrity, our ability to revitalize without erasing. Our headquarters moved downtown, into a sleek glass building that I designed myself. We hired staff. Our circle grew. Our phone rang off the hook. Mayors invited us to speak. Foundations funded our plans. I still remembered the nights I slept in my car, breath fogging the windshield, wondering if I'd ever be more than forgotten. Now, I wore tailored suits that cost more than Sienna's wedding dress, flew first class, sat on urban policy panels, and not once did I send a single press release to the Bennetts. I didn't have to. Success echoes in the right rooms. I knew eventually they'd hear my name again. I could practically picture it. Vivian stiffening as she flipped through Modern Builder. Harrison folding the page with too much force. Sienna pretending not to notice, while secretly searching my name on her phone. Still, I stayed quiet, until fate threw me a curveball. An invitation arrived. A gala for a nonprofit called City Spark Alliance, an organization Reyes and Rowan had quietly funded for years. The Bennetts were hosting it, their names stamped across every banner like a signature perfume. What they didn't know, I joined the nonprofit's board 6 months earlier. When the event coordinator emailed to thank me for my ongoing support and offered me a VIP pass, I didn't hesitate. I clicked yes without a second thought. No fake names. No modesty. Miles Rowan Bennett. Yeah, I kept the name. Not because it belonged to them, but because I had rebuilt it, redefined it. The man they tossed out? He had become something else entirely. I wasn't just coming back into their circle, I was reshaping it. See, not every weapon makes noise. Not every blow leaves a bruise. Some cut slow and deep, built with patience, crafted with care, and delivered at the perfect moment. That's what I become. While they toasted themselves in crystal ballrooms and clung to their curated illusions, I was out there drafting cities. They threw galas. I secured zoning approvals. They chased headlines. I built futures. I didn't chase the spotlight, I let our work speak for itself. Reyes and Rowan transformed broken neighborhoods into living, breathing communities. Schools, green spaces, transit, housing that felt like home, not punishment. We stitched cities back together, one blueprint at a time. Satellite offices opened quietly, New York, Atlanta, San Diego. No fanfare, just results. And still, I stayed silent. Not a word about Sienna. Nothing about the family that erased me. Until that gala. The irony was poetic. The Bennetts strutting for praise while boosting a nonprofit they didn't realize I'd been shaping from within. The email came from a well-meaning coordinator. She didn't know the history. She thanked me. Offered a warm welcome. Sent a VIP pass. I remember sitting in my office, sunlight pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows, fingers resting on a custom desk made from reclaimed wood, just staring at the screen. The moment felt full circle. So I picked up the phone and called. Told her I'd be attending. No hesitation. No disguise. When she asked what name to put on the badge, I said it clearly, Miles Rowan Bennett. I could hear her typing, then pausing. Just confirming, she said, Bennett is still your legal surname? Yes, I replied. It is. I didn't keep it to honor them. I kept it because it had come to mean something entirely different. Because every blueprint, every contract, every award carried that name. And now? So with the room they thought I'd never stand in again. Every time someone from their polished little world saw my name stamped on a city-saving project, they'd be reminded of the man they tried to bury. And this time, I wasn't coming back with a chip on my shoulder or fire in my throat. I came carrying something far more potent, success sharpened in silence. But I wasn't just showing up for the wine and charity photos. I had a plan. Because a few weeks before the gala, something surfaced. Something dark. Something rotten beneath the glitter. Turns out, Sienna hadn't stopped living off my designs. At first, it was just a whisper. An intern from a local planning office reached out. He said he recognized a design style on a Whitmore Group initiative project. Something about it felt familiar. I brushed it off. Figured it was a coincidence. Maybe inspiration. But that doubt started to itch. So I asked my team to look into it. Quietly. Carefully. Then I brought in a digital forensics guy. Paid him well to dig deep, no alarms. What we found? Designs that were unmistakably mine. Blueprints I'd created during our marriage, personal sketches I never published, never released, never licensed. Somehow she'd taken them. Dusted them off. Stamped her name across them like she had the right. It didn't stop there. Federal grant forms had been filed using credentials that traced back to my old login data. And the signatures? Mine. Or at least forged versions. The loops, the line weight, even the ink pressure, I knew them like my own breath. It was theft dressed up in silk and arrogance. Sienna had built her brand on my stolen blueprints. She was lauded for designs I'd bled over in silence. But I didn't blow up. Didn't send angry emails. Didn't even call her out. I gathered everything, screenshots, login logs, forged files. I built a case so airtight it could choke. Then I slid it all into a sleek, charcoal folder and tucked it inside the inner pocket of my coat. I wasn't going to that gala for show. I was going with precision. This wasn't some bitter mic drop. This was a reclamation, quiet, focused, and surgical. They'd spent years rewriting history. Tonight, I was bringing the receipts. Not with yelling. Not with chaos. But with truth. Cold, undeniable, and backed by evidence. Because sometimes the loudest knock on a door is the one you no longer have to make because the keys are already in your hand. Walking back into Ashford Hollow felt surreal. Like stepping into a museum where nothing's allowed to age. The marble floors still glistened like bleached bone. Orchids lined the halls, too perfect to be real. And the air, still thick with expensive perfume and generational denial, smelled exactly like the past trying to stay perfect. But this time I didn't shrink. I didn't glance around wondering if I belonged. I knew who I was. And I made sure every step broadcasted that fact. The concierge greeted me like I was expected. "Welcome, Mr. Bennett," he said, scanning the list and handing me a silver-edged pass. The irony nearly made me laugh. They had to say my name again. Print it. Wear it. Announce it. They tried so hard to erase it, and now it was laminated. I walked toward the ballroom, scanning the crowd, suits so sharp they could cut, gowns tighter than secrets, jewelry that weighed more than most people's mortgages. The room didn't just shine, it flexed. But tonight? So did I. Everything I wore had meaning. A charcoal suit, matte tie, cufflinks shaped like tiny drafting tools, a quiet wink to who I was before they tried to wipe me out. I didn't come looking for attention, but the moment Vivian Whitmore saw me, I didn't need to. Her whole body stiffened. Her fingers tightened around her champagne flute just a little too hard. Her mouth parted like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out right away. I watched her scan the room, probably looking for some purr in turn to scold for letting me through security. And then, there it was. "Why is this failure here?" she hissed, sharp enough to make a few heads turn. There it was. The contempt. That old certainty that the walls she built would always keep people like me out. But I wasn't the same man she tried to box out. I'd rebuilt myself from the ashes of that rejection. Brick by brick. Win by quiet win. Her words didn't sting. They bounced off the armor I'd built while no one was watching. Sienna stood just behind her, near the auction table, wrapped in a silver gown that shimmered like a lie told too well. She looked like the same woman I used to fight for, only now I wouldn't take her back if she came with the deed to this whole damn club. Her friends were there too. The same polished circle who used to whisper about me behind pearl-stained smiles. They hovered around her like butterflies made of crystal. Sienna glanced at me. No surprise. No emotion. Just a smirk. "You're not on the guest list," she said, her voice loud enough for a few others to hear. And for a split second I actually pitied her. Because that one sentence? It said everything. She still thought she was the gatekeeper. Still thought she could shrink a man down with a line. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. And then, I smiled. "Strange," I said, my tone steady, almost casual. "Considering I helped fund this event." And just like that the air shifted. The room didn't spin, but it leaned like the gravity had quietly changed. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. I stood still as the whispers bloomed around me, soft and rapid, like static building in the corners of the room. People lowered their glasses mid-sip. Some even glanced at their programs, maybe flipping through the donor list, trying to find the name they had just dismissed. Vivian's champagne flute shook slightly in her hand. Her lips pressed into a single red line, taut and bloodless. Sienna's smirk didn't disappear, but it wobbled just enough to reveal the crack beneath the polish. Her mouth twitched like she couldn't decide whether to laugh it off or double-check her own memory. "I'm on the City Spark Alliance board," I added, voice low and even, like I was simply stating the weather. "Been a top contributor for the past 6 months." The whispering swelled. Someone said my name out loud, Miles Bennett, and it floated above the jazz like a spotlight cutting through smoke. Vivian found her voice first. "Old instincts. Social armor." "Well," she said, crisp as brittle paper, "I suppose they let anyone donate these days." "Apparently so," I replied, locking eyes with her. "Though some of us also know how to read architectural blueprints." That landed. She didn't understand yet, but she knew enough to be rattled. Her eyes narrowed, her forehead creased just slightly. Sienna took a step toward me, closing the distance between us. "Are you here to cause a scene?" she asked, quieter now. Something in her tone had shifted. Not fear, she wasn't built for that, but uncertainty. Like she sensed a move had gone wrong and couldn't remember how it started. "No," I said. "I'm here to support urban revitalization." Then I turned and walked away. No explosion. No drama. Just the weight of presence. That moment was all I needed, the instant they realized I wasn't some uninvited ghost haunting their legacy. I was the man they cast out, now standing on the foundation of everything they thought I'd lost. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives dressed in patience. Smooth, slow, and sharpened by silence. When I stepped into that ballroom, I wasn't winging it. I wasn't reacting. I was executing a design. A blueprint I'd started sketching the moment I found out what Sienna had done. I remembered the morning it all started unraveling. I was in my office, sipping coffee, scrolling through headlines on my tablet, nothing heavy, just skimming, until one article caught my eye. The Whitmore Group initiative was being celebrated for its innovative, affordable housing designs. There was a render attached. Clean, sleek, polished, too polished. I zoomed in, my stomach tightening. I knew that building. Every curve, every angle. The atrium especially, the way light would pour through at dawn like a promise. I designed it during a sleepless night, hunched over a thin mattress with more debt than dreams, trying to sketch hope into hollow places. Now it had Sienna's name beneath it. I told myself it had to be a mistake. A fluke. Maybe I'd posted something online years ago and forgot. But the deeper I dug, the worse it got. She hadn't just borrowed a concept. She had lifted entire blueprints. Designs I'd never released. Plans I'd only ever saved to private drives. rebranded in pastel tones, her company's signature. My name gone, hers in its place. And worse still, she'd used them to file for federal tax credits. Claimed grant money I didn't even know existed. Signed forms I never touched. But the signature? Mine. Perfectly replicated. The swirl of the S. The slight upward hook in the X of Rowan. It wasn't an imitation, it was identity theft dressed in designer heels. I didn't lash out. Didn't take to social media. Didn't call her in fury. Instead, I built a team. Quietly. Intentionally. I hired digital analysts. Legal advisors. Even called in a retired IRS consultant who owed me from a project years ago. I wanted receipts. Clean. Cold. Undeniable. And that's exactly what they gave me. A folder full of dated files. Metadata linking the documents to my original drives. Access logs. Login trails. Even IP addresses pointing to Sienna's own devices. There was an email, too, from one of her assistants. We'll need to scrub Miles's watermarks again. That one hit different. It wasn't just theft. It was erasure. Strategic. Casual. Like I was a bug being wiped off a windshield. But I didn't get angry. I got focused. Every piece of proof slid into a black folder so sleek it looked like it belonged in a boardroom. I tucked it inside my jacket before heading to the gala. And as I smiled at donors and shook hands and played my part, that folder rested against my chest like a second heartbeat. Because I wasn't there for spectacle. I was there to reclaim what was mine. Across the room, Sienna was in her element. Laughing. Gliding from conversation to conversation like she was made of charm and light. Every smile was tailored. Every compliment calibrated. She'd always known how to work a room. But this time, the ground beneath her was built from stolen stone. And the man who laid it was watching her every step. I kept one eye on the stage. Naturally, the program listed Sienna as the keynote speaker. Of course it did. No doubt Vivian orchestrated every detail, casting her daughter as the visionary, the benevolent soul behind the Whitmore Group Initiative's latest miracle projects. Sienna was their polished emblem of redemption and reinvention. When the announcer introduced her, the crowd leaned forward in unison, expectant and obedient. Sienna stepped onto the stage like she was born to be there. Her silver dress sparkled under the lights, catching every eye. She gripped the microphone like it was a scepter, chin high, confident. For a split second, she looked untouchable. Tonight, she began, we celebrate the power of innovation, the transformation of forgotten neighborhoods into vibrant communities, the beauty of design that serves a purpose. I stood near the back wall, sipping water from a crystal tumbler, unmoved. Her voice flowed smooth as silk. Every word landed with practiced ease. Legacy, sustainability, hope. She pointed toward the screen behind her. Renderings filled the projection, and the audience nodded along like they'd been trained to. Her tone carried pride. The applause came naturally. These projects, she said, represent everything the Whitmore Group Initiative stands for. That was my cue. As the lights dimmed for the speaker transition, I made my move. I walked down the center aisle, not rushing, not sneaking, just moving forward like I belonged. Because I did. Heads turned, first puzzled, then intrigued. By the time I reached the stage edge, the room had gone still. Sienna turned. Confusion flickered across her face, then something sharper. Annoyance. I stepped up beside her and gently took the mic from its stand. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, keeping my voice level. My name is Miles Rowan Bennett. I'm the co-founder of Reyes and Rowan Urban Designs. The pause that followed didn't need filling. You could feel it, the recognition rippling through the room. I'd like to clarify something tonight. Just then, the screen behind me lit up. My team had everything cued. Side-by-side comparisons. My original blueprints displayed next to Sienna's designs. They were identical. The room sucked in air as one. And then came the rest. Federal tax filings. Matching signatures. IP logs. Metadata. Proof stacked on proof. This work, I said clearly, slowly, was stolen. These blueprints were created by me and used without my knowledge or consent. I let the silence hang for a beat. They were submitted for profit, for recognition, and yes, used illegally. That evidence has already been filed with the IRS and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Gasps shot through the room like electricity. Camera shutters fired. Whispers turned into frantic murmurs. Vivian jerked halfway out of her chair like she'd just been shot with cold water. Sienna? She looked like the blood had drained right out of her face. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. I'm not here to retaliate, I said, the microphone steady in my hand. I'm here to take back what's mine. My voice. My legacy. And with that, I handed the mic to the stunned MC, turned without another word, and stepped off the stage. Behind me, the silence was fracturing, bursting into sound. I didn't look back. Some moments you spend years preparing for, drafting the speech, compiling the evidence, imagining the fallout. But nothing prepares you for the silence right before the break. That stretch of stillness where truth fills the air, heavier than any scream. I walked through it. Sienna stood frozen in place, her arms still half-raised, like she'd forgotten what to do with her hand. The crowd she once controlled buzzed with uncertainty, now uncertain of her, of everything. Vivian struggled to stand, her composure slipping, her social instincts scrambling for a graceful exit that didn't exist. The rest of the room? The names, the faces, the influencers and board members who used to pretend I wasn't there, they were watching me now. I didn't need to see the slideshow to know it was still rolling behind me. My team had rehearsed every cue. Blueprint after blueprint, my old designs flashing across the screen, some from 10 years ago, some still unfinished drafts never meant for anyone else's eyes. Each one placed beside Sienna's polished presentations. The theft wasn't subtle. It was surgical. Then came the grant applications. Scanned. Highlighted. My name erased. Hers inserted. The signatures? Copied with such eerie precision it might have been art if it weren't a federal crime. The last slide in the presentation had shown something simple, login timestamps tied to Sienna's devices. Every click, every edit, every stolen file. This wasn't just shady. It was criminal. And I had already submitted every shred of it to the proper authorities long before I ever stepped foot inside that ballroom. No emotion. No theatrics. Just truth. Let them handle it however they pleased. I walked back through the crowd without saying a word. People parted, unsure whether to make eye contact or pretend they didn't see me. Faces twisted with curiosity, guilt, fascination. Someone whispered my name. I caught stray phrases floating in my wake. Was that true? Those were his designs. That's the guy who... Security didn't move a muscle. And why would they? I hadn't broken a single rule. My name was printed on the guest list in bold, right above platinum-level contributor. I stepped out into the cool night air. It felt too calm, too still for everything that had just happened. My driver stood by the car, door open, expression unreadable. I gave a single nod, slid into the seat, and let the door click shut like the final punctuation mark in a sentence I'd waited years to finish. No grin, no fist pump, no moment of celebration. I just sat in the silence. Because ending one battle doesn't bring peace. It just means the fire starts spreading somewhere new. The next 2 days moved like a controlled burn. It started small. A local article dropped less than an hour after the gala, Whitmore Group initiative accused of architectural theft. No quotes. Just whispers. Then the storm rolled in. Morning news segments. Social media threads. Design blogs speculating. Architectural Digest issued a careful statement, something about a pending review. Business magazine scrambled to update Sienna's glowing feature piece, now full of edits and disclaimers. Suddenly, I wasn't the man they forgot. I was the architect reclaiming everything they took. Sienna tried to get ahead of it. That afternoon, she posted a photo, her sitting at her desk, soft lighting, the perfect touch of lipstick. The caption read, "There have been recent allegations questioning the integrity of my work. I take them seriously and have initiated a thorough internal review." An internal review. As if that could undo years of stolen work and stolen credit. Vivian? Radio silent. Not even a PR-washed soundbite. She vanished from the society columns overnight. The woman who once ran every charity circle like a queen had suddenly fallen off the map. And me? I said nothing. No interviews. No tweets. No gloating. I let the chaos whirl around me while I stood still. Because I didn't need to shout. I went back to work. Not the daily grind, my partners at Reyes and Rowan had it covered. I turned my attention to something new. Something I'd been quietly building for months. We launched Groundwork Collective, a foundation dedicated to protecting underrepresented architects and designers. Focused on IP education, legal defense, and mentorship. The timing couldn't have been better. We announced our board 10 incredible members. Diverse, visionary, resilient. Not a single Bennett among them. My inbox exploded. Emails from freelancers, artists, creators. People who'd been ignored, underpaid, plagiarized, or pushed aside. They wrote, "Thank you. Now I know I'm not crazy." They tried to erase me too. That hit harder than any headline. I never wanted to be a hero. I didn't care about the spotlight. I just believed creators deserved to own their work and their truth. That week, Reyes and Rowan's stock jumped nearly 20%. Investors reached out. Existing partners doubled down. Opportunities multiplied. Meanwhile, Bennett Properties was sinking. Sponsors bailed. Deals dissolved. Invitations to high-end galas? Pulled. But I never lifted a finger to bring them down. They were the architects of their own collapse. All I did was tell the truth. And now for once, the world was listening. I expected backlash. Thought I'd get buried under denial and spin. What I didn't expect was the silence. The Bennetts had always been a machine, loud, relentless, dripping in press releases and champagne. But after the gala, it was like someone yanked the plug. Everything stopped. No damage control. No last-ditch statements. Just quiet. It wasn't a crash. It was a slow deflation. Surgical. I could almost hear the air leak out of their carefully curated legacy. The headlines didn't let up. Heiress accused of stealing architect's work. Federal investigation opens into Whitmore Group initiative. Justice for Miles Bennett? That last one made me stop. Justice. I hadn't even thought of it that way. I wasn't chasing a courtroom win. I didn't need Sienna to beg for forgiveness on national television. What I wanted was recognition. Truth. Restored. I wanted the world, the one that once looked through me, to finally see me. And they did. Within days, the messages poured in. Podcast hosts. Journalists. Architecture students. Independent designers with stories of their own, stories of being ghostwritten, underpaid, erased. People like me. The messages kept coming. From people who knew exactly what it felt like to pour your soul into something only to watch someone else slap their name on it like it was always theirs. I read every word. I couldn't respond to them all, but I carried each one with me. They became fuel. Quiet proof that this fight was never just about blueprints or stolen credit. It was about every silenced voice. Every unseen hand. I didn't reach out to Sienna. I didn't have to. Her absence online said everything. No apology. No denial. Just a slow fade from the design world she once reigned over. Her company issued a vague press release filled with corporate filler about internal reflection and restructuring. They blamed a junior associate. I almost laughed. They'd found someone else to push in front of the bus just like they once did with me. But I wasn't watching to see who fell. I was watching for change. That's when I knew it was time. Time to launch the thing I'd quietly been building behind the scenes, the Heart of Groundwork Collective. It started with a scribble on a napkin during a red-eye flight. An idea that wouldn't leave me alone. A foundation created to protect independent designers. To arm them with the tools I never had when I was young and too trusting. Real contracts. Legal support that didn't cost a month's rent. Workshops that taught creators how to protect their work before someone else claimed it. I funded the launch myself. No parties. No press release. Just a quiet announcement on the Reyes and Rowan website and a mission statement that said it all. Second chances belong to those who never had a first one. We built our team carefully, no celebrities, no shiny titles. Just people who'd lived it. Independent artists. Whistleblower attorneys. IP warriors who'd been through copyright wars and walked away with the scars to prove it. Our board was intentional. Survivors of erasure. First-generation architects. Immigrants. Designers who had been dismissed, downsized, and still kept going. Within a week, we had over 100 applicants. By the second week, that number tripled. It wasn't just that people wanted help. They wanted someone to believe them. And I did. Because I knew the feeling too well. I was once the guy with rolled-up sketches in a second-hand backpack, no safety net, no legal team. Just hope and a pencil. I'd lived through the betrayal that doesn't just steal your work, but makes you question whether you ever had talent at all. So I made myself available. Quietly. No stage. No spotlight. Just a man with an open door. One morning, I walked into the office, bare walls, clean tables, sunlight warming the concrete floors, and found a note on my desk. Handwritten. No return address. No email. Just neat, nervous handwriting on a folded sheet of paper. I was going to quit. I thought they won. But then I saw what you did. And now I'm sketching again. I sat with that note in my hands for a long time. That was the moment it hit me. This was the real victory. Not the downfall. Not the headlines. Not even the justice. It was that someone, somewhere, picked up a pencil again. That a voice almost silenced found its breath again. That mattered more than any courtroom win or media praise. That was legacy. And in the calm after the storm, I finally heard the one sound that meant something. The quiet rustle of new pages turning. Designers sketching again. Dreaming again. Speaking without waiting for permission. I helped build that. Not out of revenge. But from blueprint. I never expected to see her again. Not in person. Not like this. Weeks had passed since the gala. The headlines cooled. The chaos faded. Reyes and Rowan signed 2 new contracts, one in Baltimore, one in Portland. Groundwork Collective kept growing. I filled my days with work and purpose, deliberately leaving no space to think about Sienna, Vivian, or the world I'd stepped away from. But fate has a strange sense of humor. It was a Saturday. Early afternoon. I was speaking at a local civic design expo. Nothing glamorous, just city planners, students, and community architects sharing ideas in a drafty town hall that smelled like varnish and middle school science fairs. I liked it. No one here cared who I'd exposed or what foundation had crumbled. They cared about building things that mattered. I just wrapped a panel on adaptive reuse and was wandering through the student exhibits when I saw her. Sienna. She stood near a presentation on sustainable mixed-use design, hands folded in front of her, studying a blueprint that wasn't hers. My breath caught, not from longing, but from surprise. She looked different. Not smaller in size, but in presence. The armor she used to wear sparkle, arrogance, invincibility was gone. Her hair was pulled back simply. No makeup. No entourage. No glitter. Just Sienna. Alone. For a second, I wondered if she'd pretend not to see me. I turned to leave quietly. Respectfully. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't need closure. I had already built mine. But then she looked up. Miles, she said. No venom. No frost. Just soft. Almost unsure. I paused, let out a slow breath, and turned to face her. Sienna. We stood there for a moment, 2 people once tethered tightly, now connected only by memory. Not tense. Just tired. Like we'd run through the same storm, but from different sides of the street. She stepped closer. You didn't reply to my message, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Which one? Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. I sent you an email. After the gala. I didn't expect you to write back, but I needed to say something. I gave her a small nod, but said nothing. There was nothing left in me that needed to be said. My story had moved on. She was a chapter halfway through, a turning point once, but never the ending. She shifted her weight, glanced around the room. I came today to see the new talent, she said. To remember what this used to feel like before it became a brand? I asked, not cruel, just honest. She flinched slightly, but didn't deny it. I got lost, she admitted. In the name. The pressure. My mother's voice in my head always pushing. Somewhere along the way I stopped being a designer. I just became someone who managed perception. I nodded again. I wasn't here to forgive her. That wasn't mine to give. I always envied the way you saw things, she added after a beat. Not just buildings, but the people inside them. The way you designed for someone, not around them. It was the closest she'd ever come to giving me credit. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't see the woman who locked me out, who erased my name, who chose silence. I saw someone older. Quieter. Smaller in spirit, not stature. Someone who'd finally been left alone with the mirror and no one left to lie to her. I hope you find your way back, I said. To the version of you that used to dream out loud and sketch without fear. She swallowed hard, eyes shimmering. I'm trying. I nodded once. No more. No less. Then I turned and walked away. Not because I was angry. Not because I was proud. But because I didn't need anything from that moment. I'd already faced the ghost and she didn't haunt me anymore. I passed more booths, more young designers beaming as they shared their vision with the kind of joy that reminded me why I picked up a pencil in the first place. That's what stayed with me. Not the woman behind me, but the people ahead of me. The ones still building, still hoping, still fighting to be seen. They're the ones who mattered now. And as I stepped out into the afternoon sun, I felt it, that unfamiliar lightness. Like something heavy had finally slipped off my shoulders. No applause. No climactic ending. Just quiet. A man walking forward. And a woman, for the first time, letting him go. I wake up now with sunlight pouring through glass I designed myself. The house sits just high enough above the city that I can see the skyline stretch out in the distance, not like a threat, but like a promise. This home wasn't purchased. It was built. Every beam, every angle, every inch, drawn by hand, shaped by experience, poured from memory. And it's quiet here. Not the kind of silence you find in loneliness, but the kind you earn after reclamation. There's something strange about surviving your storm and realizing you're still here, still standing. You expect trumpets, fireworks, applause. But the truth? It's quieter. It's in the slow sip of coffee on your own porch. It's in the way you glance at your reflection and don't flinch anymore. It's in hearing your name said not with pity, not with skepticism, but with respect. My name's on blueprints from Nationwide now. Reyes and Rowan Urban Designs isn't just a firm. It's a movement. We don't just develop properties, we restore dignity. We design spaces that respect life, community, history. And the world has noticed. TED Talks, interviews, university panels. I've been invited into rooms that once turned me away. Not because I courted attention, but because the work spoke loud enough on its own. People have called me visionary, revolutionary, even brave. But I'm none of those things. I'm just a man who told the truth and kept telling it when it made people uncomfortable. I never needed to destroy the Bennetts. They did it to themselves. Their empire was built on polished lies and borrowed brilliance. All I did was hold up a mirror. I let the world see what had always been hiding in plain sight. Sienna slipped out of the spotlight. Her boutique chain crumbled under the weight of lawsuits and growing public distrust. Vivian quietly sold off 2 of her properties. Stepped down from the boards of 3 different foundations. Harrison? He vanished across the Atlantic, claiming to be expanding international investments. No press release. No apology. Just a slow, silent unraveling. Like a silk thread pulling loose, one stitch at a time. I didn't celebrate. I didn't dance on the ashes. Because by then I was already gone. Already building something better. Groundwork Collective became more than I ever thought it could. We've protected dozens of designers from being robbed of their own brilliance. Helped creators patent their work. Showed them how to hold their ground in negotiations. Funded scholarships for first-gen architecture students who never believed a seat at the table was meant for them. And the stories that walk through our doors now? They remind me why I ever started. Why I used to sketch homes in the back of a public school classroom, dreaming of warm roofs that didn't leak and streets that didn't trap you in. That boy? He'd be proud of the man I became. There are still hard days. I won't pretend otherwise. Sometimes I look at one of my older designs, the one Sienna claimed, and I still feel it. The sting. The ache. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things had gone differently. If they hadn't shut me out. If they treated me like family, not charity. Would I have stayed? Would I have settled? Maybe. And that's the scariest thought of all. Because in trying to erase me, they did something else entirely. They freed me. Freed me to become a man they never would have let me grow into. Freed me from the need for approval, from the cage of being grateful to be included. Freed me to build with both hands without begging for permission. I don't carry vengeance anymore. It did its job. But it's too heavy for the life I live now. These days I wear something different: purpose, peace, progress, and a quiet kind of pride that doesn't need headlines or applause. Every now and then I get letters, messages from people who say I inspired them. Who say my story helped them stay in the fight. They thank me for being loud in a world that wanted them to stay quiet. They call me brave. But I tell them the truth. Bravery isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about endurance. It's standing when they try to make you sit. It's picking up the pen again when someone tears your last page in half. And now, as I sit at my drafting table, sunlight pouring in, sketchpad open, pen steady in my hand, I finally understand what legacy really means. It's not about fame. It's not even about being remembered by name. It's about what you leave behind. It's about creating something real enough that no one can steal it, not with lies, not with power, not with influence. Because the truth? Truth is fire. And when it finally catches, it doesn't knock. It doesn't wait. It burns away the fiction until only what's real is left standing. That's what they could never take from me. And that's what I'll keep building from. One honest line at a time.